It's tempting for me to think oftentimes that biology is chemistry. That that's all biology is. It's chemistry, chemistry, chemistry. It's elementary. It's just a bunch of elements configured, emerging, unfolding. That's who we are. That's what we are. That's what all biology is. That presumes, naturally, that we are biological organisms. I was wondering this morning, I think it was this morning, of why there is this temptation to go from the ground up, so to speak, from the atomic to the chemical, from the physics to the chemistry to the biology, and then psychology and minds growing out of brains. Why can't it be some other way inside out or outside in? Maybe that's how the intelligent design or creationism idea comes into play. A sort of teleological process, the unfolding, almost a chicken egg kind of thing. Does the tree make the seed, or does the seed make the tree? Is a seed trying to become a tree? Is a tree trying to become another seed to perpetuate itself? This waveform that collapses down to a point, expands to a particular amplitude, resonates at a particular frequency, this electromagnetic type of phenomenological model. If consciousness contracts to a point from the beginning of the beginning, as we as conscious beings look back in time, we look out and find observationally there's this beginning, there's a point. The mass is infinitely dense, it's out of reach. The mathematics has yet to be able to describe it. At the speed of light, a photon arrives instantaneously wherever it was going until it turns into something else. Those little packets of energy instantaneously everywhere. Well, I would think that they're at the end of time also, except the end is right here, right now. We are at the end of time. So if now, if there can be said to be such a thing as now, always now, eternally now, at the end of time, and that is where we are at, consciousness unfolding itself as itself, and I'm probably going to want to say that's another reification. And yet, from the top down, biologically, we are the ones who are creating this ground up point of view. Food for thought, huh? We grind it all up, the view gets all ground up, spit it out. To say biology is chemistry, that's a consciousness function. It's a function of consciousness. And yet it's tempting to try to take consciousness out of the equation. In a way, physics emerges out of consciousness. Time emerges out of consciousness. Our views of time emerge out of consciousness. And yet, the project of science flips this over, turns it inside out. A very powerful tool and a very strange phenomena, to me anyway, how this emerges and unfolds and loops back unto itself, into itself, and out of itself. I suppose what I'm trying to say or point at is that science isn't the only paradigm in town. And as useful as it is, if another view is of some metaphysical, psychological, of any personal use, a blanket, a comfort. Blanket statements are good. They might be comforting. They might be logically erroneous. A lot of people grow out of views they had maybe as children and think Santa Claus, for instance, doesn't exist. I might like to point out how the spirit of Santa Claus does exist. The spirit of giving, the spirit of love, and to presume this is all chemistry, it's all physics. That's a presumption, and that's okay, nothing wrong with that kind of a presumption. It might not be as factual or actual as to flip it over, say, no, wait a minute, love is what exists actually. It's easy to see love in action and hate in action and all these emotional states in action. Crying and laughing. How much more real can it get in the people sphere than people being people? To think that people are just chemicals or people are made of quarks, those are good thoughts. I like those thoughts. And there can be realities proven if you have a super collider and want to put all kinds of energy into it. The more and more energy that's put into it, to make the smallest of smallest particles might take all the energy in the universe. The infinitely dense, massive, non-thing at the beginning, at the Big Bang, that took all the energy there was back then. And now, here we are. And we always were. The thing of the things are, we keep on changing. How I am now, what I am now, as an individual, I see myself changing. Sometimes my changes are very bizarre. They astonish me. Sometimes I could say they're entirely artificial. I might also say that they're entirely natural. It's natural to be artificial. But I think that was beside the point. What is my point? I think I get stuck at points when I start thinking about other realms of potential, human potential, paranormal, impossibly to reproduce scientifically phenomena. How to explain experiences that people have that can't be explained in the lab oratory. Those are fascinating points. I would like to fasten something onto them, to draw them out in a line, at width, in depth, and even into the complex imaginary dimension. I was reading something yesterday about metamorphosis and how the imaginary, or rather imaginal stage, is a stage of maturity. But some people might not be like Chuang Tzu and have a dream about being a butterfly and then not being entirely sure which is which and who is whom. There's that old butterfly effect. Did the butterfly create the Big Bang since we're at the end of time? How can the end create the beginning? And yet here we are at the end creating the beginnings all the time. How much of the Big Bang is created by people, no matter how much people try to take themselves out of the equation? How much of Earth really is a pale blue dot? That pale blue dot, is it less real or more real or the same as Earth as a sphere? In a way, people could be said to create the appearances of the Big Bang, the fossil record, all that is, as all that is appears to people to be as people create it. To assume there is an all is quite an abstraction. Maybe it's more or less than to think biology is all chemistry. I may say it's all more or less, and after the fact. The fact is the given, and the given is what's taken for granted. A bottom-up view, a top-down view, a ground-up view. This is pretty well ground up. Kind of made mincemeat out of the words. I like to mince words. To bake them, half bake them, chew them up, food for thought. Whatever. Sowing mulch for this. Time to go for now.